is when President Trump said that the Iranians had shot down an Apache helicopter, a U.S. Apache helicopter in the Strait, and that he was going to retaliate. And Tuesday night, and I'm giving this to you in terms of East Coast time in the United States. Tuesday night, President Trump ordered the American military to attack Iran, and they did. And Iran, as promised, retaliated, they argued, disproportionately. The Iranians have made it clear that they will retaliate more forcefully than the initial attack by the United States. Whether that happened, I don't know, but they did forcefully retaliate. This is Tuesday night. Then yesterday, Wednesday, the United States retaliated again. And the Iranians retaliated again. And today, Thursday, as you said, Tom, at midday, President Trump promised he was really going to up the ante this time. Not only were we going to retaliate with air power, but we were going to seize Kharg Island, take over Iranian oil, and basically assert our tremendous influence on the world oil market, not only because of what America produces, but also because of what Venezuela produces. And now we're controlling Iranian oil in this story. So it looked like we were really upping the ante at midday, as you pointed out. Then, out of nowhere, President Trump said he was calling off the attack, and instead, we're close to negotiating a ceasefire, a real ceasefire. And he anticipated that would happen in a few days' time. So there's no more escalation. And we're back to where President Trump is arguing that we are close to a ceasefire. And that's the basic situation. If you want to ask me what happened here, as I've long argued, Tom, we cannot go up the escalation ladder and defeat the Iranians. Yeah. And you want to remember, we went up the escalation ladder on Tuesday. They matched us. We went up the escalation ladder on Wednesday. They matched us. And the idea of now attacking Kharg Island is fanciful. I mean, if attacking Kharg Island made sense and taking over Iranian oil made sense, we would have done it a long time ago. The reason we didn't try to take over Kharg Island is because it makes no sense from a strategic point of view. The point is that we're checkmated, and Trump fully understands that. And he also has to understand that he's got to shut this thing down. This just can't keep going on for economic reasons.
Yeah, but when President Trump made his threats early on Thursday, it was no surprise that his hawkish defenders like John Podhoretz at Commentary Magazine, General Jack Keane on Fox News were thrilled that he finally threatened to escalate things militarily, and they praised him for this. And now they're trying to explain his about face.
Well, Tom, the fact is these people are fools. You can throw General Keane in the mix. You can throw Lindsey Graham in the mix. I mean, these people are living in a dream world. Anybody who's looked objectively at this, even if you're a hawk, even if you're a neoconservative, should come to the conclusion that Robert Kagan came to.
Yes. We should stress Robert Kagan was a leading neoconservative who supported who led the charge to invade Iraq in 2003, and he's since been mugged by reality, right, John?
Exactly. I mean, we have no military option here. And when you listen to people like Keane and Lindsey Graham speak or Podhoretz speak, these people they're delusional. There's
The Wall Street Journal in their editorial today actually said that Trump needs to do what President George W. Bush did in 2007 and do a surge of troops, which worked very well for Iraq, according to the Journal. And that's what Trump should do. Follow President Bush's advice in 2007.
Well, we know how that worked out. But even if you think the surge worked, this is a fundamentally different situation. We invaded Iraq in March 2003 and had lots of troops there. So you had a foundation that you could build on for a surge. We have no ground forces in Iran, no foundation that we can build on. Furthermore, There are 93 million people in Iran. It is a huge piece of real estate, and the terrain in Iran is forbidding. The idea that you're going to go in there and it's like invading a pancake-like country like Poland is delusional, right? This is just crazy.
Yeah. And 3 times the population of Iraq. Here's a question already from Alan from Philadelphia. Is all this just for stock options bets, John?
No,
what's driving Trump?
I think Alan's question gets at the sense that there's a powerful economic dimension at play here. But I don't think this is all about, Trump padding his portfolio or something like that. No, I think what's going on here is that President Trump and his advisors understand that we are heading toward the economic precipice and that this war has to be shut down sooner rather than later. In fact, people who are in the know about the economics of this situation say that even if you shut it down tomorrow, you're going to have significant economic problems down the road. The economic problems from this war are going to last for a long time. It's like the embargo. The OPEC embargo of 1973. So President Trump has to shut this down. And instead, he was talking at midday today, Thursday, about upping the ante. This would have, had disastrous economic consequences. It would have sped the pace at which we were heading toward the precipice. And I would also note, Tom, I have long argued that it is in Iran's interest for President Trump to go up the escalation ladder and to prolong this war. Because the longer the war goes on, the more leverage Iran has. And therefore, I think it made eminently good sense for President Trump to say, no more going up the escalation ladder. What we're going to do is get a ceasefire. And by the way, you all know, all the viewers, that we're just talking here about getting a ceasefire. We're not talking about negotiating the final settlement on issues like, nuclear enrichment. That will wait to the second phase. We just first have to get a ceasefire. That's what we're working on now. And hopefully President Trump will stick to his guns this time, negotiate a ceasefire, and then we can get on to hopefully working out some sort of deal or quasi-deal. Regarding the nuclear
Here's another question here for you, John. Is there a way Trump can walk away from the illegal Iran war without triggering Israel's Samson option?
Well, I think there's no question that if we walk away, Trump just washes his hands of this, and there's no nuclear deal, and it looks like the Iranians may be getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, we want to understand, Tom, and your questioner, that this war has given the Iranians a powerful incentive. If they didn't have one beforehand, they certainly should have one now to acquire nuclear weapons. And we also understand that they have a lot of highly enriched uranium. Uranium that's enriched to 60%, which can easily be enriched to 90%, which is weapons grade material. And they have 400 plus kilograms of that. They could probably make 10 to 12 bombs. So if we walk away and the Israelis can't deal with the problem I just described conventionally, the incentive for them to at least think and maybe even use nuclear weapons to take out a burgeoning Iranian nuclear program will be very great. So there is real danger there. But I think you don't have to worry about us walking away.
Next question, John. Is the likely and promised retaliation by Iran against surrounding countries and possibly US bases in Europe acting as a deterrent to further large-scale military strikes?
I think there's no question that the threat of retaliation against the Gulf countries and Israel and American military installations in the region is causing the United States to look for a way to get a meaningful ceasefire. If you look at what's been happening over the past couple days with these exchanges between the Iranians and the Americans, the Iranians have been launching very effective attacks at American bases in Bahrain and in Kuwait. Uh, and I am sure the Saudis are going to great lengths to tell the Americans they want absolutely nothing to do with this. I'm sure the Saudis have signaled to the Iranians, we are not playing this game. The Americans are not using our bases to attack you. They're not using our airspace because the Saudis do not want to be hit by the Iranians. It's the Kuwaitis and the Bahrainians who are being hit at this point in time. So you see this phenomenon clearly at play, and it's having an effect on us.
Next question, John, is there not a strong argument to be made that Trump will go for broke and attack Iran again, given that he has already made a number of foolish mistakes already? I mean, you could make the argument that the credibility and the prestige of the United States is at stake, and he keeps making these threats and he fails to follow through. That hurts American credibility and prestige, which, as you know, as a realist, John, is a useful supplement to American power. Does the questioner here have a point?
Well, I think the question is a very smart question because the questioner indicated that he thought it would be irrational for Trump to attack Iran. And the questioner, of course, is correct. And it may be the case that Trump, has that particular thought process and lashes out at Iran. But 2 points, very closely related. One, it's not going to work. And number two, therefore, it is irrational. Mm-hmm. And we're assuming at this point in time, maybe I should say we're all praying that Trump and his advisors will act in a rational, legal way and do everything they can to get us out of this mess that we're in.
Hypothetically, next question, suppose a nuclear weapon is used against Iran, either by Israel or the United States. Question here is, what effect could this have on nuclear proliferation in the Middle East and globally?
I think it would have a devastating effect on proliferation. It would tell everybody that they should get a nuclear weapon of their own and make sure that that nuclear weapon or nuclear weapons that they have are survivable. And I think that's one reason the United States would go to great lengths not to use nuclear weapons itself and do everything it could to prevent the Israelis from doing that. But I think it's very important that we don't cross the nuclear threshold here, either in Ukraine, where there appears to be a danger of nuclear escalation these days, or in the Middle East, in the scenario that we often talk about, where either the United States or Israel uses a nuclear weapon against Iran.
Today marks an important milestone in the Ukraine-Russia war. It's now longer than the World War I. Today's the day, John, and I can't think of a better person who's been able to explain the Ukraine conflict since 2022, or indeed since the Russian incursion in Crimea in 2014 than you, John. So changing subjects here, this is Tony from Brisbane, Australia. He's actually British, and he notes that John Healey resigned as UK Defence Secretary today. He has been saber-rattling for a war with Russia. But then he found out the UK is potless and there is no cash for the military. What a debacle. John.
Well, all the European countries are suffering economically, and there's a real 1-2 punch behind this. The first punch is the 2022 war. When it started, February 24th, 2022, you want to remember that the Europeans then began to move to cut off all oil and gas from Russia that was cheap oil and gas. And that meant that they had to buy oil and gas that was much more expensive. Mm-hmm. So the economic sanctions and the cutoff of the flow of oil and gas into Europe hurt the European economies. Then the second thing that hurt the European economies was the February 28th decision to attack Iran and create this oil crisis and gas crisis in the Gulf. That is damaging European economies, and it's going to do much more damage over time. There's no question about that. I followed the British economy, which was not in terrific shape before any of this even happened, and they're in terrible shape now. And it's not only the British economy, it's true of the German economy as well, and the French economy. And this means that those economies are not in a position to pick up the slack of providing money and weaponry to Ukraine as the United States tries to get out of that business. Yeah. Remember, not too long ago, the United States said that it was willing to allow American weaponry to go to Ukraine. This is before the Iran war, when we used up a lot of that weaponry. But nevertheless, the deal that we were talking about before the Iran war was that the Europeans would pay for that weaponry. So the Ukrainians would get American weaponry, but the Europeans would pay for it. The United States would not pay for it. This put a huge burden on the Europeans. And again, when you talk about the economic problems that the Europeans have, there's no way they can go on sustaining Ukraine over the long term in its war against Russia. And this is one of the reasons I've long argued and continue to argue that the Russians will win a ugly victory against Ukraine.